We will be starting in 1 minute.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the Budget Committee of the Whole to order for February 12th, 2024. I apologize for being a little bit late. Grimsby is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattah-Wenderong, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The regional municipality of Niagara and the town of Grimsby stand with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest? Seeing none, can I get a mover and seconder for approval of the agenda? Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Vardy. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Vardy. Result of the February 12th, 2024 Budget Committee of the Whole agenda be approved. All in favor? That's carried. All right, just before Angela starts our presentation, Sarah, our CIO, would like to say a few words.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So on behalf of staff, I'm pleased to share with you the proposed budget that reflects our commitment to investing in a high quality of life, responsible and progressive growth, and collective prosperity. This year's theme is embracing the present, achieving tomorrow. Our focus for progress, and the proposed 2024 budget builds on the momentum and progress achieved in the previous year, with a focus on building a strong and sustainable community. So grounded in the present with a focus on the future, this budget reflects a thoughtful and balanced strategy in addressing community needs while ensuring the responsible use of resources. It maintains a continued commitment to building an innovative and vibrant community where people and the environment matter. So throughout the budget development process, staff took a balanced approach to prioritize the maintenance of existing services and infrastructure while also advancing new and sustainable opportunities to enhance and expand our service in alignment with Council's strategic priorities. I want to say that at the heart of this budget are the dedicated efforts of our hardworking town staff. With direction from CLT, there was a tremendous amount of collaboration among all of our departments, all of them being here tonight. Our municipal employees have consistently shown an unwavering commitment to the betterment of our community. They have worked tirelessly to ensure the smooth functioning of essential services, maintaining public spaces, and addressing the diverse needs of our residents. We are confident this budget is a positive step in moving the town forward towards achieving its goals. With that, I'll turn it over to a really dedicated finance team to present to you our 2024 budgets. Thank you.
Welcome, Angela.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm happy to be here tonight to present the 2024 budget on behalf of the corporate leadership team. There are a few items that we're going to be reviewing this evening: budget considerations, reserves, and the overall impact, to name a few. We'll start with the 2023-2026 strategic priorities. In 2023, Council set a vision and strategic priorities to plan for the future. Council's vision: an innovative, vibrant community where people and the environment matter. Staff built the budget in 2024 with Council priorities in mind. CLT strived to bring fiscal responsibility budget that focused on supporting the people, fostering responsible growth, and collaborative prosperity. When reviewing current services, To set the context, the town's operating base budget is $44.7 million in gross operating expenditures. This includes all base budget services, excluding the projects, both operating and capital, the town provides to maintain our existing service levels. The chart illustrates how the costs break down proportionally by service area per $100 of tax spent. These expenses include typical day-to-day expenses, such as compensation, utilities, materials, just to name a few, but it also includes $8.5 million transfers to reserve to sustain our capital program. This transfer is up from $7.5 in 2023. The increase in the reserve transfer is largely a result of anticipated increase in investment income in the current market conditions. This year, the town will see roughly $1.6 million in surplus interest, and this has been earmarked to offset future PKC debt needs. Budget considerations. So staff have prepared the 2024 budget using a corporate approach, taking into account the budget pressures while aligning the town's long-term financial plans and important policy decisions of council. The budget was adjusted based on departmental need, regardless of previous budgets established. We considered 3 to 5 year trends. As a result, some departments may have seen more or less percentage change relative to each other. This required a focus on strategic objectives and cutting the budget in all areas available without impacting service levels. The 2024 proposed budget looks to maintain service levels while recognizing inflationary pressures. Dedicated funding to ensure assets are maintained in state of good repair includes strategic community investment. Inherent in the annual operating budget process are the pressures of inflation, growth, as well as infrastructure renewal costs. The operating 2024 budget presents an opportunity for the town to invest in resources. Through the budget, we continue to invest in our people, places, and prosperity. This slide provides an overview of the risk identified as we develop the 2024 budget and are being presented to you again for consideration and awareness. The inflation in 2023 year experienced inflation of 3.4. However, council is aware the inflationary pressures impacted by the town this year was much higher for construction and service-related costs. Federal and provincial policy budget changed has associated risks to the 2024 budget. In addition to the impacts of Bill 23, 134, DCs, and regulations continue to impact the budget. From Bill 109, more homes for everyone, there will be an existing risk related to development application review. There is a staffing request further in this presentation that we will review and to address the additional pressures to help mitigate that risk. When looking at funding, we continue to attract funding opportunities. However, there is risk as this funding is not guaranteed and is subject to change. For 2024, we have seen reductions. In OMP went down 5,000 and OCIF has gone down 330, which we've reached out to the province to get a breakdown of why that amount has gone down. Asset management, the town is currently working on its phase 2 of the plan, the non-core assets information, and will be presented in 2024. This information is key in identifying the asset replacement needs and potential funding gaps. Also important to note, the inflationary pressures on maintenance and construction costs continue, as well as impacts on the supply chain delays on operations and planned projects. The economics and factors inherent in the budget are the inflationary pressures affecting interest rates on investments, debt, utilities, and fuel. On a positive, the budget includes a higher interest revenue with a large portion of the revenue transferred to reserves to mitigate future debt needs for PKC project. The risk here is the reduction in interest rates could negatively impact the base operating budget needs. So it's a balance between funding the operations and planning to use the excess interest as a one-time purpose. The reassessment was done last in 2016, 8 years ago, so we're not sure what that looks like when that happens. We are anticipating shifts between properties and tax classes, and also we anticipate high volume of appeals that will occur as a result of the reassessment. Labor markets continue to be a competitive internal and external to the organization. This can result not only in having required resources to deliver the programs and services in the town, but could also mean that we don't have available services for programs and services that we rely on from external vendors. So operating and capital project summaries. So in addition to our operating budget, we have projects to increase transparency and accountability. We separate the operating projects from our base budget. These projects are one-time in nature or cyclical, do not occur every year, and generally do not result in an asset. For this reason, we track them separately to ensure they get funded from operating reserves and not capital reserves. They are strategic, directly connected to council priorities, and/or legislatively required. Some are carried forward projects from prior years, and some are new. 15 new projects proposed in 2024. These initiatives are significant, integral part moving the town forward. They include initiatives like community services user fee study, library feasibility study, climate change work, and parking lot operational improvement strategies, just to name a few. The full list of projects can be seen on page 141 to 142 of the budget book. 5 projects are carried forward from 2022 and 2023 requiring additional funds. Just like capital projects, these are funded mainly from reserves, development charges, and grants, and are not increasing the net tax levy. Note, operating projects include 3 temporary full-time positions, or FTEs, budgeted for in the projects as one-time temporary basis. One to support Bell Canada Fiber, which is funded through Bell. One to support the official plan, and one to support records management. Also important to note that on page 29, ongoing projects are included, 5 of which requesting additional funding. Moving to capital project highlights. The 2024 capital program is a significant investment for the town at $10.5 million. Similar to the operating projects, they are carried forward and new initiatives included, and projects are funded from mainly reserves, development charges, grants, and does not impact the levy. With 49 new projects, many amazing asset renewal and growth infrastructure are planned. Projects like Whitaker Park renewal and Pump House shoreline improvements, water main and road rehabilitation, fleet and large equipment replacements, investment in LED lighting across various facilities, ongoing investment in technology, and so on. For a full listing of the business cases, please see 167 to 321 of the budget book. 45 ongoing projects, 20 of which are requesting additional funds in this budget. So on the next slide, you'll see staff are continued to invest developing the 9-year capital forecast along with the 2024 budget. The value of this 10-year forecast is to better understand our capital needs in alignment with our asset management plan, our available funding, and better align our timing and resources for the work to be done. As you can see, 25 and 26 are outliers compared to the rest of the forecast. For 2025, the top 3 projects include downtown water main and complete street improvement, Nels Lake Beach Park improvement, Whitaker Park renewal, and Pump House shoreline improvements. For 2026, the top 3 projects are Fire Station 3 construction, water main rehabilitations for Main Street, Park Road South, and Ontario Street, and wastewater rehabilitation. Along the bottom, we have identified the funding sources available: reserves, development charges, federal gas tax, Canada Community Benefit Fund, sorry, it's not gas tax anymore, and OCIF. It's important to note that the forecast also does include debt, but included in that debt, it's debt levy funded and debt DC funded debt. So we have both these debt types included in that forecast. The 10-year capital forecast is shared as a starting point and a great help forward to ensuring sustainability and affordability in our capital program. As we work through the asset management plan, we will revisit this analysis and see how we're doing, and it will form part of the financial funding plan for our asset management plan and will likely require some tough decision by council in advance of the 2025 budget. We also would like to note that the chart shows both growth and replacement projections, so not all of the spend relates to replacement or rehabilitation of the existing assets. Next steps will be updating the asset management plan with non-core assets, looking at the overall needs of the reassessment and availability, and developing a debt strategy and funding forecast. All these, the 10-year forecast can be seen on page 322 to 336 of the budget book. So looking at our financial health and considering the reserves that we have, so many of the great projects and initiatives the town is planning, we also have made significant improvements in the financial health. While there are many indicators of financial health, reserves Reserve strategy and balances are a key way in which municipalities can show they are investing in the future, supporting renewal and rehabilitation of assets. In 2023, the town adopted commitment budgeting, where reserve dollars are allocated to projects and committed, and any excess dollars are not added back to the reserve until the project is complete and closed. We continue to monitor and update our reserve accounts as projects progress and are completed. Only when the project is finalized do we do we adjust the actual spend from the reserve account accordingly. This ensures that our reserves remain accurate, reflective of our ongoing financial commitments. For example, the funding for the fire truck approved in 2022 has been set aside for this project and deducted from the reserve, and any adjustments will be made when the project is closed. In the past 10 years, the reserve balance for the town has improved through council's credit. When surpluses existed, they were reinvested into our reserves to improve the financial health. The 2024 budget includes transfers to the reserve of $8.5 million, which is $7.5 million in 2023. The current year includes an additional transfer set aside for PKC and West Lincoln Memorial Hospital, and the current year also includes an additional transfer set aside for PKC of 1.6, which we had noted earlier. Our reserve balance for 2024 is slightly higher, an upward trend. However, we need to continue this trend with ongoing investment in future years, with a continued focus on asset management to sustain our estimated asset base of $1.3 billion. As noted, future needs and commitments will need to be balanced against the asset management plan when finalized in 2024. The 2024 balance reflects $12 million budgeted commitments to be used for capital and operating projects. When we see from the chart, you can see from the chart that over 2025 and 2026, the reserve commitments increase to support planned investments, as noted on the previous slide, dip into 2025 and 26. For 25 and 26, again, those projects are the downtown water main and complete streets, Niles Lake, Whitaker Park, and 26, the fire station, water main rehabilitation, and wastewater rehabilitation. So the financial pressures that we're facing, the town levy on the 2024 budget is 4.67 before the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital and after 1.54 in reassessment growth. And finally, before we move to summarizing the increase, I wanted to highlight the financial realities of the budget. We did have some significant pressures in 3 areas: wage increase related to contracts and benefit costs, revenue projections adjusted for cemeteries to align with actual trends, reducing programming revenues for PKC to align with the construction of the facility, as well as partially offset by savings and costs. In addition, our annual plan transfer to the reserve fund for future debt for PKC of $132,000. Investments. In addition to the pressure, staff were able to make some key investments and such as increased transfers to reserves, as previously noted, the 1.6 for the PKC. Also important to note that the multi-year budget includes a planned 1% infrastructure levy for 2025 and a 2% in 2026 in anticipation of the asset management plan. And lastly, a strategic investment in our cybersecurity software and insurance policy has also been included. When looking at our strategic investment in staffing, our people are essential to the component in achieving our strategic and corporate priorities. Through our people strategy, the town continues to invest in our people to meet the organization's human capital needs and serve our community. In 2024, we had 4 main focus, which include the competitive compensation to ensure we can attract and retain staff, career and skill development, continuously empowering our people to provide training and development for current and future roles within the town. And health and wellness has been flagged as a priority by our staff through our staff survey, and this is important to us. And performance culture, continue to focus on maintaining a team dedicated to achieving results in all positions across the organization. Investing in our people is critical and simply good business. So when we look at the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital, in addition to the base operating budget, we have a levy commitment in our investment to the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital. The ask for this in 2024 is $88,000, which represents 0.53 on the town's tax levy. Staff investigated a 20-year debt versus a 30-year debt, and this resulted in interest savings of $2.6 million, and a shorter term provides debt flexibility in the future if needed. This increase will provide the town with enough base budget to make an annual debt payment for the next 20 years. The hospital indicated payment of $9.3 million in full at the completion, which is estimated to be early 2025. And so the intent is to issue the debt in 2024 with payment to take place early 2025. After considering base budget pressures and after our commitment to the hospital, our levy increase is estimated to be 5.2% after growth of the 1.54%. Earlier, we mentioned that there was a business case that we wanted to bring forward to council consideration. In response to the legislative changes through Bill 109, the More Homes for Everyone Act, the town is adapting its development approval processes. These legislative changes mandate faster decision-making on new development applications with financial penalties if delays occur. Grimsby has experienced a rise in complex development projects, straining our existing resources, particularly in the engineering section. This leads to bottlenecks and delays in decision-making. To assist with this, we propose separating capital projects, including asset management, transportation engineering, from development engineering, creating two distinct divisions. This requires the addition of 2 full-time staff development positions to support the new development division. We've minimized the tax levy impact by repurposing existing positions, ensuring efficient resource allocation. This strategic move aims to enhance efficiency, accommodate workload challenges, and improve responsiveness to the development community, and results in a net zero levy impact. The overall impact, when looking at water and wastewater, we are proposing an increase in the fixed rate of 3% or $10 per year on the fixed component of the water rate. The current rate is $326 and we're proposing $336, with no change to the variable rate at 1.54 per cubic meters. For the wastewater, using the methodology the council approved back in May 2023, we see this fully phased in 2024 with 50% special tax levy and 50% recovered from the user rates. Again, staff are proposing no change to the variable rate at 1.23 cubic meters. This will result in an annual increase on the wastewater side of approximately $14, $67 reduction on the wastewater special tax levy, and $81 on the annual consumption increase for a net annual increase of $14. So with water and wastewater combined, it's an estimated $24 per average household. So bringing it all together, this slide provides an overview of the impact for levy and water bill impact based on the average assessed home of $442,000 and the average consumption of 200 cubic meters. Overall, the average taxpayer will see an annual increase of $94 or 3.7 combined impact. $70 on the tax bill, $67 increase on the special tax levy, offset by $91 on the tax levy, on the water bill, for an overall impact of $94 or 3.7% increase. When creating the budget, we need to consider affordability. So when considering our proposed tax increase, we want to review this in context with affordability. As you can see from the chart, Grimsby is the second lowest in relation to the residential property tax of $100,000 assessment, and is 38% below the average of our comparator group. When looking at our affordability in relation to everything included in considering household income, we see that the town is actually the lowest of our comparators at 4.4%. So this includes water, wastewater, and taxes in comparison to our average household income. And I just wanted to note that the information on the last 2 slides were provided from the 2023 BMA study. So bringing it all together onto one tax bill, a lot of numbers here, I realize, so hopefully we can get through this okay. So we want to make it helpful, pull it together for you. The total tax bill is shared amongst the town, the region, and the school boards. The town's base operations had an increase of 4.67. This is equal to $63. The town's special levy for the hospital is an additional $7. And the town's wastewater will decrease 16.92% or $67 per year. The reduction in the wastewater revenue, although we're not proposing a rate increase, we're anticipating last year, the new wastewater model was phased in May, which was only capturing 8 months of the year. This year, we'll be capturing 12 months of consumption in the year. So even though we're reducing the revenue, we're not increasing the rate, we'll be capturing revenues throughout the whole year, which will offset the tax reduction. Overall, taking the region and the education levies and the wastewater reductions into account, there'll be a combined tax bill impact of 4.02%. And lastly, I just want to flag, based on the approved regional tax rates and our proposed rates, the region's share will represent 58% of the average tax bill, 30% will be coming to the town, and 12% will go to the province for the education portion. Important to note, under the Niagara region, that covers the policing, transit, housing, public health, waste management. And for the town, it deals with our local roads, community services, fire, buildings, and a share of our wastewater is also included in that 30% as well. That's just not tax levy. And so when we move on to future considerations, things to consider as we move forward, technology continuing to invest in the modernization of our systems. These enhancements would provide better information to make informed decisions and improve the service levels that we have. Fund advocacy, where we continue to proactively monitor available funding opportunities for both federal and provincial. The user fee review started in 2023 and is ongoing. The aim is to ensure that fees collected are representative of the costs incurred to align with the user pay strategy and help alleviate pressures wherever possible off the tax levy. And a user fee review for community services programming is planned for 2024 as part of the 2024 budget. And lastly, the assessment-based strategy to align with council's strategic priorities to expand the commercial and industrial tax base is ongoing. The pressures that the town has been facing, infrastructure levy, which I noted earlier, the impact on our asset management plan and the funding strategy to support future needs in advance of the budget in 2025, continued investment in our resources to accommodate growth, for example, resources to support the Casablanca Park and PKC expansion. Once completed, this incremental growth will require incremental resources to support these new services. And in conclusion, I would like to thank CLT and Council for the opportunity to present the budget today. And before I end, I do want to thank the Finance Department for the work behind the scenes and being able to bring this budget to fruition. So thank you. And we are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your presentation, Angela. We're going to take questions after the discussion report. So need a mover and seconder to receive the budget presentation. Moved by Councillor Bradzi, second by Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Bradzi, second by Councillor Frake. Resolve that the staff presentation on the 2024 budget be received. All in favor? That's carried. Up next, we have a discussion report, FIN 24-04, Consolidated Budget Report. Can I get a mover and seconder to get it on the floor? Moved by Councillor Korstanji, second by Councillor Howe. All right. So
there isn't a separate presentation for the report.
is there? Okay. All right.
Can we just proceed first and then we'll start going into the presentation?
All right, yeah, so moved by Councillor Korstanji, second by Councillor Howe. Resolve that report FIN 24-04, 2024 Consolidated Budget Report dated February 12th, 2024 be received. All in favor? That's carried. All right, so now we're going to talk about the line items on the budget recommendations. The first one's Community Development Grant Program in the amount of $100,000.
We just get a mover and seconder.
Need a mover and seconder to get it on the floor. Councillor Frake. Councillor DeFlavio.
Thanks, Mayor. So just a procedural question. Are we not asking questions on the presentation?
the line items, each line item here is from the presentation, so questions can be asked through that.
What if our questions are related to the presentation itself?
So they're not covered in the resolution, so it's something different?
Yes, because it's more about procedure and about the process. than
Well, I
it is
think
about-
procedure and process, we're going to look at that when we get to our governance review. It has
Well,
nothing
that's
to
not
do
the
with
kind of
budget.
process that I'm talking about. So I have questions about the presentation. Am I going to be allowed to ask them? I guess is my question.
Yeah, I think you'll be able to ask them when you feel it appropriate. So we're going to do line item 2 now. We have a mover, Councillor Frake, a seconder, Councillor Howe. All right. Now that one's on the floor, so yeah, the Community Development Grant Program. Any questions or comments on that? Councillor DeVoley.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. And really, I guess I have comments about it, not so much questions. As I have shared with others on more than one occasion, I'm not a big fan of using municipal revenues for anything other than municipal purposes. I would say I, continue to be disappointed in our province, who likes to download things onto municipalities and not even fund them. And by virtue of that, of course, then organizations and people come knocking on our door. I feel for them, but my primary focus always is to, protect the heart and soul of the municipal functions that we carry out. What we did in the last year, though, was we recognized the reality that, organizations are still going to apply to us, even though we may not feel it is our job. The reality is they're going to apply to us and ask us for funding on occasion. And so I'm happy we now have a very great process in place to basically, vet the applications that we get and to do so all at once. And I think that was a really good step forward. So I like this approach that basically, recognizes the yin and the yang, that one, I'm not that much in favor of using municipal funds for all these other things that I will say are somewhat not our function, yet at the same time recognizes the reality that they're going to come knocking on our door anyway. And so we have a process in place by doing this that now says, if we have a surplus, we will entertain it then, right? So the question, of course, the last question, I guess, that I will share that I struggle with is, how much should we be doing this for? And last year we agonized over this, and I was a proponent of the 100,000, saying, well, you have to give away enough in order to see if this process is really going to work, to be able to evaluate it and so on. If we only approve $5,000, we haven't tested the waters at all, basically, in this, right? So here is where we still land, and the recommendation from staff is still for 100,000. I will say that, there is this piece inside me that would like that number to be lower, because first and foremost, the principles that I live by is that the municipal monies are for us to run things with, not to spend on all the other lovely asks that we have, lovely as they are. So I will stop there with my comments. Sure.
And just to make this process maybe a little bit more complicated, one of the things we wanted to address is, as you notice in the motion, it says if available. So that might not mean, even though we've put in 100,000, that might mean we've only have 50,000 available or 5,000 available, or maybe there's nothing available that year, depending on what our demands are. So something to consider when you're approving this. I think it'll be reviewed again at year end when we're looking at the surplus and bringing that forward to council for council consideration. That number might change.
Councillor Carsangi.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I have to agree with Councillor Davoli. I love the idea of that we set the process, and we did need that to create more of an equitable situation for our community groups. Unfortunately, what I found is not all our community groups have the same education in grant application and how to actually apply for grants. What I would like to see is maybe focusing a little more in the next budget on the education of teaching our community groups how to apply for grants. For this one and for other ones, it would benefit them all. And then maybe using the surplus of this year for the grant for next year.
Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm gonna ask a question here, but I missed the opportunity to ask questions on the consolidated budget report, so I'm hoping I'll have the opportunity to ask that question. Regarding the grant program, can you refresh everybody's memory about how it was funded in 2023?
Yes, through the mayor. In 2023, it was a pilot project, and so council has a corporate strategic reserve fund. So in that recommendation, it was to be funded from council strategic priorities, and then so as a pilot, and now it's looking at, do we bring it forward and impact the tax levy, or do we look at funding it from a surplus revenues and not actually impacting the levy? So this is a decision that we brought forward if council is open to that.
If I can ask a follow-up to that one. Thank you. So through you, Mayor, have we looked at other municipalities around the province to see, best practices for these types of programs, to see if other municipalities even offer this type of program? I know that many offer programs similar to the ones that we offer through our recreation program, recreation department, where, you can apply for a grant for a specific thing. But do we know of other municipalities that offer programs like this one with a set amount of money?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I'm trying to rack my brain. In our report, I believe we did reach out, look at different municipalities, more of the larger ones, I believe Guelph and Cochrane, and I can't remember if there was another one, but there were a few that we did reach out, and they were providing grants through a grant process and not just a specific ask of council.
Councillor DeFlavio.
I'm going to step aside if there are other questions related to number 2, but I would like to go back to number 1 if possible, please, and ask questions about the consolidated budget.
Yeah, any of those questions we'll do down after number 9. Any further questions? Seeing no further questions. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Howe. Resolved that the Community Development Grant Program in the amount of $100,000 be approved and funded from year-end surplus when available. Can we vote on e-scribe, please? All right, so that was carried. All right, I need a mover and seconder to get the 2 permanent full-time positions on the floor. Moved by Councillor Bradsey, second by Councillor Vardy. Any discussion? Councillor Vardy?
Just a question, can we see the votes when they're done, please? came up? Oh, I missed it. Okay.
All right, any discussion? Councilor Bradzi.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Just want to thank staff for putting these two positions on here. I think they fulfill two very critical needs in what we're currently facing. My question to staff is this going to be enough?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, question is, will it be enough? I think the fair answer is that we're always assessing our resources. I think we've brought together what we felt was a good business case this year, supportable this year. As I'm, 3 years into my director's position, I think collectively as a CLT group as well, we're always looking at how we can be more efficient and whether there's improvements needed. So I think it's fair to say that it's what we need this year, but I think those pressures will keep coming as we continue to grow, and we're continually looking at our resources and how they how that fits with everything. So hopefully that kind of answers your question.
If I may continue, Mayor, thank you. It does. Thank you for the answer, Brandon. I just along the same train of thought, where I feel like these pressures will continue to mount on us, and maybe it's something we might need to address again in 2025, but I just, with them both being zero impacts to the levy, as I understand they were contract positions for making permanent, kind of even questioning myself if we can consider a third at this time. From colleagues.
Councilor DeVoley.
Mayor Jordan, again, a comment on this proposal as opposed to a question. In business, when revenues start to increase and there is pressure on a business to do more, typically the first thing business owners do is we all work a little harder, including our staff. And then when that is almost too much, then we go out and we get part-time staff, and I'm trying to equate this to our staff, so follow me in this process. So we go out and we get part-time staff, and eventually we get, if business is good and it keeps rolling in and the work is there, we get to a point where we say, you know what, now maybe we need a contracted person because we don't know how long this revenue is going to keep coming. And eventually in business, we get to a point where we finally say, now we need a full-time person too, right? And my understanding of what our Public Works Department has gone through is just that our staff started by all working a little harder, probably a lot harder. I'm not trying to minimize the extra work you were doing, and then we kind of gather part-time staff around us and then more full-time. And we have now reached that critical position where we are now saying these positions, we see this work being so fulsome and so far into the future that it justifies a full-time employee. So I find the rationale completely in line with how any of us dealt with it in our business world as to what we would do. And for those reasons, I do support it.
Councilor Vardy.
Thank you. I concur with Councillor DeVoley, and I think we know that, we've got some big projects on the horizon with respect to development. So we know that the demand's going to be there for, the next probably 5 years. And like any organization, if it does sort of demand goes down, that's where you find how to reallocate. So I'm perfectly comfortable with this ask.
Councilor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. I'm in support of this as well. I raised concerns, and I'll continue to raise concerns, that if new staffing is a requirement because of increased development or changes to development, that development needs to be held responsible for those costs. So we need to do whatever possible from a municipal perspective to ensure that the income from development matches what we're putting out for development. And I understand that there are costs that the town has to incur, but at no point should residents of the town of Grimsby be paying for new development. And so I support this. You've done a great job of justifying these staff positions. I just think we need to make sure that when it comes to our future reviews of development charges and things like that, we need to keep all of these things in mind and be especially considering the increased costs that are coming as a result of increased development. That's all.
Go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I just wanted to address that. One of the things we're doing right now is a user fee review, and included in that is a development application approval process, DAP fees. And with that review, we are going to be looking to ensure that we are fully recovering the costs associated with that development review, so it is not impacting the levy.
And I just want to add that municipalities have always worked on growth pays for growth. It's the province that has changed that plan. And there, I really feel, and I certainly, every time I talk to our MPP, I remind him that growth has to pay for growth, or we just will go backwards. And we do not want our existing residents to fund growth, because that's not the way it was set up, and that's not the way it should be set up. All right, seeing no further questions, moved by Councillor Bradsey, second by Councillor Vardy, resolves that the addition of 2 permanent full-time positions with a net zero levy impact, as outlined in the report, be approved. All in favor? Oh, sorry, please use your e-scribe voting. Thank you. And that was carried. Up next, can I get a mover and seconder to discuss the approval of the 2024 capital budget? Councillor Sharwa. Seconder. Councillor Frake. Councillor Sharwa, would you like to start off discussion?
Dear Mayor Jordan, thank you. 2 things. You had mentioned, and I didn't see it here, Fire Station 3, and I don't know that we've talked about it before. If you can first come up with that.
Oh, thank you for, sorry, through the mayor. When we were looking at the reserve forecast, you could see there was a significant dip in 2025 and 2026, and that's where those projects are planned in 2025, 26, because we're forecasting out. So that's where the Fire Station 3 is planned for.
Okay, so being a Ward 3 councillor, the 40 Mill Creek Bridge was very important to me, and Councillor Korstanji. It was very important to our constituents, and unfortunately, we pulled that project, and I would like if we could maybe have a talk about adding this back into the budget, well, because it's already in the budget. So if we could pull that money and see if we can tender this again and get this started and see if we can find a better price. If price is the issue, I'd like to take another shot at it if possible.
Thank you. Thank you. Through you, the mayor. In the 2020, sorry, what year are we in now? 2024 budget, we have included an additional amount. We've maintained the 555 that was in the previous budget, and we've added an additional 100 and 110 for the bridge. So it has not been removed. It's been maintained in the budget and an additional amount added to it.
Sorry, just for clarification though, is this something that we can all agree that it's going to move forward, or do we need to procedurally to do this at a council meeting to bring it back to the table?
Well, it's in the budget. It's in the budget.
but we deferred the project, so I'm just wondering if this is like, we've put the money aside, but it's not going to do anything there?
Is Sarah Sweeney here? Thanks, Sarah.
Through the mayor, so we have put the project back in for the 2024 budget. We did add some additional dollars that were consistent with what we saw coming out of that first procurement award. In some other conversations, what I will commit to all of you is I've heard some feedback about looking at some different variations for the bridge to manage the cost differently. So what we would like to do is take that away as staff, come back with some other options so that we can have some further consideration and then move forward with the project once that decision has been reached.
Thank you, Sarah. Councillor Bradzi.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. So just kind of in our opening presentation there, just considered for capital projects, we had 49 new projects and 45 ongoing. I just kind of think, in my report, it's had this lined up for in 2025. I just think we have a lot on our plate for 2024. I felt it made sense in 2025. But just looking for clarification. So it is on the books for 2024 this year. Just give me a sec. I thought I saw 900K in 2025. Can I move to defer to 2025?
Councillor, could you just confirm which project you're referring to?
We're talking about the Pump House Trail, or Bridge, sorry.
So through you, Mayor, there is a project in 2025 planned for 40 Mile Creek Trail. Right, but the bridge is actually in 2024. So we budgeted 555 with an additional 110 for 2024 commitment. So the total project now is budgeted, included in this budget for 2024 is 665,000.
Yeah, just on that, I think given the initial cost, looking at other ideas and other ways to build that bridge, I think that's something that I think Sarah wants to do, and I think it's prudent to do. Councillor Vardy.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think the reason we deferred it in the first place was cost at the 555. Now we're asking for another 110. While I'm supportive of the bridge in theory, I'm not supportive of that cost. So I'm not comfortable with the additional 110. And I would like to talk about some projects where I would like to see more money go in rather than less. So if you like, I could tell you what those projects are right now.
Yeah, it's certainly if it's a capital change, I think we are in the capital budget portion, so now is the time.
Okay, thank you. So what I'd like to do is, I don't like the additional 110. I'm not in favor of that. I support the bridge, but not at 665. And where I'd like to see more money go in, and I know Director Brandon has heard me say this, I think we definitely need more money to do landscaping in the cemeteries on Mountain. Also, while I know we're doing the transportation master plan right now, and it's probably going to take the entire year, I would like to see money in the budget for some pilot speed bumps to be done this year and not to have to wait till 2025 to do those. There's also, as you know, I've talked before about speed reduction, particularly on side streets. That should be reduced to 40K from 50K. And I know Director Wortman said that there would be a cost to doing that. So I would certainly like to see some cost in this year's budget to do that. So if we could reallocate that 110 to those issues. I know we have money in the budget for cemeteries, but it's strictly to buy 2 more columbariums. And I think this is an excellent place to start greening and increasing our tree canopy, which is really necessary for the health of the community. So I would like to see more money, taking that 110 and allocate it into those 3 functions. So if I would, should I prepare a notice of motion or a resolution?
See you, Mr. Mayor. So we'll prepare those resolution, but we'll finish the conversation on capital budgets, and we'll address all the motions that arise out of this conversation.
Councillor DeVoley.
Thank you. I will say that I share the same concern as my fellow councillors on allocating more money towards our bridge. Lovely as this bridge is, I do feel that it's a bit of a bridge to nowhere. And of course, it comes with additional risks in a time of climate change. When we put a bridge down in a creek bed, which is considerably lower than the road and the houses around it, that is the natural waterway. And I realize, we have all these regulations to meet and so on, but I too would really like to see us find some other way to do this than spending those sorts of dollars on it. I do have a question, though, and I'm hoping someone can answer it. I don't know who to direct the question to, but it has to do with our famous Town Hall Cogen building here that I think is part of the Peach King Center project we were contemplating doing something with in order to accommodate the expansion. Could someone just talk about that? Is now the right time to... Because I think there are costs in our budget for its, I'll call it deconstruction or for its removal.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Staff did discuss this project, and it was flagged to be deferred from this budget. So I believe there's a motion that's going to be put on the floor to address that.
And the reason for the deferral?
Through the chair, originally we were putting it through this year because we thought we were going to have to use that area for parking as part of the Peach King Center expansion, but we do not think that we require that. So we're able to defer it, give us a little more time to focus on some other projects. It's not to say we won't still look at that structure and look maybe more towards Brandon for that as well, but it's not seen as something that has to happen this year.
Okay, thank you. I must say that that building brings back bad memories for this town every time we all pull into the parking lot. And there is certainly this little part of me that would like to see it gone from our memories. But I understand, and deferring it is just fine. I would like to just make some general comments about our capital budget without the specifics and say that, one of the things, I always look at from a financial perspective is, how much amortization are we having every year? And that has been 6.7 million in prior years, probably in that neighborhood. Let's say 7 million for the sake of rounding a number. And what amortization is, I'll call it the usage of our capital property, recognizing that in accounting terms. And realistically, on a historical cost basis. So this is based upon the cost of what we bought these buildings and roads and water mains for, what we spent on them years and years and years ago. And if we're going to stay on top of where we are, at a minimum, we have to spend $7 million just to maintain our position and have enough spent. And so what I like about this budget is that, we have 7.4 million that we are saying we need to spend in order to replace or to rehabilitate our capital assets. And I think that's excellent. I will say, if we had the time, money, and staff, I'd say even more, right? And then we're spending another 3.1 million on new and enhanced things as well, which are the things we need to do if we're going to go forward. If we're going to, go with the times. If we're going to adopt more technology, try and improve customer service, those other things are things we need to do. And so those are good. At the same time, we're transferring into reserves for these capital items and for future capital items, some 8.5 million. So you can see how all the numbers kind of hang together, right? We're amortizing, we're using up the value of these assets in the neighborhood of 7 million, but we are spending every year and trying to stay on top of replacing those. And this year that number is 7.4 million, with the new projects 10 million. And at the same time, we're also planning to move, 8.5 million into reserves for future projects. All those are, from a financial perspective, key things that we need to do. And so I like what I'm seeing on, when I rise above the detail of being in the trees, when I arrive, when I'm in that helicopter over the forest, I like this approach, I will say.
Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. So going back to the discussion of the 40-Mile Creek Park pedestrian bridge replacement and the proposed moving of the $110,000 from one column to another, with all due respect to my colleague, that's not the way it works. This is from, the proposal was that the $110,000 be funded from the parks, playground, and green infrastructure rehabilitation and renewal reserves. So this is not on the levy, and it's not new spending. It's coming out of reserves. We can't just move it from a parks reserve to, any other project that's not related to parks. So while I understand Councillor Vardy's concerns, and I think that we will address them once we complete the studies that are underway, it's completely inappropriate to say that we're just going to move $110,000 from the parks budget and use it to put in speed humps. So those two things are not related, just to be clear, and we shouldn't mistakenly put those things together. So with that in mind, I think that the $110,000 is an appropriate budgeting amount. I think that Ms. Sweeney has very clearly stated that the goal is not to spend the $110,000. It's to look at different approaches. But what it does is it allows for the flexibility of the original project. So, I'm okay with it. I would rather not spend that much money, to be clear. I think that if we could come in significantly below that and change the project to make it more affordable, I'd like to do that. But we say repeatedly that we want to trust our staff. Well, then we have to give them what they need in order to do what they need to do. And in this case, I think that, we followed the process. We budgeted for this bridge last year. We didn't give adequate money. And the purpose of reserves is to smooth out these humps. That's why we have reserves. We have reserves for years like this where we come in over budget and we say, oh, we don't have enough budget for that. We need to take it out of reserves. That's what staff is recommending we do in this particular case. So I have no problem with that particular use. Thank you.
Councillor Korstanji.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Just a couple comments on the bridge. It is, the residents in that neighborhood, it's an older neighborhood, have waited for this bridge for more than 6 years. Our community groups, Take a Hike Grimsby, Bruce Trail, they all use that bridge. Our events, Iron Girl, they use that bridge. Not just Ward 3 residents, but Ward 1 residents walk along, they use that bridge. It is a community asset. We are consistently fixing up and building beautiful playgrounds and park areas in our newer neighborhoods where our existing neighborhoods are waiting years on years to have their park spaces improved. and maintain. So I am in full support of the bridge. It was in the budget before, it was passed, and it was approved by Finance Committee, and then at the last minute, it was deferred. But I think it's necessary. I think that, we're going to take a new approach, and environmental assessments, I believe, Sarah, were done and stuff like that. So for climate and stuff like that, that's all going to be considered. So I support the bridge.
We have Councillor Bradzi, then Councillor Vardy.
Thank you, Mayor, through you.
Angela, did you want to comment on the last thing?
Sorry, just through you regarding the funding, Councilor DeFlavio, regarding funding from different reserves and crossing over, we would stay within our bucket. So if we're looking at roads rehabilitation, that would stay from the roads assets. Parks would come from green space and parks. So I just wanted to confirm that understanding was correct.
All right, Councillor Bradzi.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. So when we look at capital projects too, we also have the Nels Park, which is close by, which the beach access has been completely eroded, that needs work as well. And we also have a significant amount of work going on at the Peach King Arena. And we had a month ago an ammonia leak at the arena, and we have what's not included in our arena project to date, but we do need to do is to look at those and improvements to the rinks themselves, and i.e. getting off ammonia. I think we got a lot on our plate as it is, and I think we need to focus on what we have on our plate at the moment. And when we're opening up the arena, I think it'd be absolutely prudent to be looking at the whole building as one picture. And if we have other repairs to do at the same time, I think we should focus our sites here. And then we have several others, plenty of sites around town that need work. The bridge, trail, the pier, Nels Park beach access. We're not going to get to them all at 1 year. In 2024, I think we should finish everything that we've already committed to, because we've committed a substantial amount of money to quite a number of projects. And I'd like to see a few of them get checked off before we start committing to any more.
Councillor Vardy.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me. Sorry. I take Councillor DeFlavio's point that, yes, we can't just take from one and put it to the other three things where I've identified. We need to allocate some money. So notwithstanding that, and I don't know what you want to do, but I would like to see budget increases in those three project areas. The other thing I want to say is that ultimately, there isn't a fairy godmother that funds the reserves. The reserves come from the taxpayer. Okay, that's the leftover money. We put it into reserves for things we can't, things that come up that we want to look at somewhere down the road. But ultimately, we really have one big source of money, and that's the taxpayer. So, I think we should be very judicious in how we spend our reserves. I want to make it clear, I'm fine with the bridge, not at $660,000. I'm fine with the bridge, but if we could only do it for $660,000, then I'm not fine with it. So I'm not fine with adding this $110,000 to something that we deferred because it was too expensive at $555. That makes no sense to me. So that's one thing. So just for the additional resolutions, more money in cemetery speed bumps and speed reduction. The other thing that I want to say, and I'm not sure where this fits in, but every year the Auditor General of Canada will look at a project, analyze it, and say, was it good value for money? When we do an audit here, all the audit is doing is, did we do the paperwork right? Did we file our papers right? Is everything in order? Did we did we follow the right procedure? But, you know, when we bring up something like the cogen, and say the biodigester, where a lot of money was spent on these projects, the Gibson Street Bridge, not to pick on you, Sarah, but we need that function, not just the general audit function or, you know, did we tick all the boxes, but we need that function to say, you know, did we get value for money? Was something overbuilt? Was something, you know, was that money just wasted? So we need to build into our budget that evaluation funding for the projects that we've got here and identify some every year to be looked at.
All right, up next I have Councillor Sharwa.
Through your Mayor Jordan, thank you. So I'm fine with the bridge not being 660,000. I just want the bridge to come back and find something because it's been, like Councillor Cristangi said, it's been 6 years in the waiting. It's absolutely appalling when you are a resident and we pay so much money in tax dollars and you walk down there, and a lot of people do, and we have plywood there with a little happy face spray painted. It is absolutely horrendous because there's no way that something like that should have sat there for years and years and years. And here, you know, other things are happening. The priorities seem to be in the newer areas, and we're completely neglecting our constituents in the older areas. So I would appreciate it if we could just bring this back, and if we could get it under budget, that's fine. But it's something that at the end of the term, it would be really nice if this was improved so that we could say, yes, we actually did use the tax money wisely and made these improvements.
Councillor Frake.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. We can assume that the bridge has been approved. I mean, that's a done deal. I mean, that's that's behind us. I'm just curious, and I have no problem with the bridge. Last year, I also approved it, or I voted for it. What is the extra $110,000 for? Because I don't think anyone asked that question yet. What is this extra $110,000?
So through the mayor, if I'm correct, when we had the bridge discussion before, the conversation was sort of deferred, right? So that 110 that I added is about the amount of money that we expect the bridge, if we kept it the same, would cost. So that's where that extra 110 came in. You know, I think if we wanted to look at trying to keep it at a lower amount, as I said, we're happy to go away and see what we can do for other costing and other alternatives. And you would have, we would bring that back to you to see what we can do to come back for a lower cost. Not knowing for sure where the direction of council was going to go based upon the last conversation, we did put in that extra 110, which again is reflective of what we saw through that initial procurement. So that's where that comes from.
Thank you, Sarah. If I might. I think $660,000 for a footbridge is like building Taj Mahal. We've had this conversation before, Sarah. So I've always had a problem with this amount of money to build a footbridge. And we built the Gibson Street Bridge over beside Councillor Howe, and that bridge is like Taj Mahal. And I don't think we need that kind of bridge in this particular case. I know there's some other issues that you have to deal with, but I think we should stick with the 665,000, whatever it is we have. How much? 555. 555 that we have already in the budget. And I think we should take out this $110,000. I think we should take it out of this budget completely and try and work within the numbers we had originally. We might have to be a little bit creative. Maybe we have to find a consultant that's more creative. But I think that we should be able to build that bridge within the original amounts we agreed on. I know and we're kind of stabbing in the dark a bit here because we don't even know if we're going to need that $110,000. So let's assume we don't need it. Let's take it out of the budget and move on. That's my suggestion. And then maybe you can get your 110 from somewhere else. Thank you, Mayor Jordan.
So are there any further comments for capital? You've spoken twice, unfortunately, Councillor Bradsey. But any more capital comments? Right, what we're going to do now is because we have some resolutions on the floor, we'll take a 5-minute break just so staff can get these together, talk to the movers and the seconders, if we have any, to just get the final clarification so we have these resolutions that want to proceed straight. So any further questions?
We are.
Yeah, they will be all looked at separately. So we are going to go into recess for 5 minutes. We'll come back at 5 after 7. All right, welcome back, everyone. We have a couple resolutions on the floor. All right. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Vardy. It's resolved that $110,000 be removed from the 40 Mile Bridge project, so we need a seconder.
It was my resolution.
Oh, I'll have you as seconder then, even though it was yours.
What's your second?
All right. So moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Frake, resolved that the $110,000 be removed from the 40 Mile Bridge project. And Sarah, you'd like to speak on that, if you'd wish?
Through you, Mayor, yeah, we'll do, if that is a direction, we will take that back. We will look at what our options are and happy to bring them back to council and see what we can do with that.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, I read the resolution. You can vote on e-scribe now. All right, that is carried. Up next, we have moved by Councillor Vardy. We still need a seconder. Resolved that an additional $100,000 be allocated from the 2025 budget to the 2024 budget to add landscaping in cemeteries. Question, we need a seconder. Second by Councillor Frake. Questions or comments? Councillor Howe.
Through you, Mayor. I was around a long time ago when we set up the Mountain Cemetery. It was done with a lot of care and concern. It was done with a lot of research at that time, what we had available to us in respect to plantings and vegetation. And our idea was to build something that was sustainable and that was maintenance or a low maintenance that we could maintain up there. So I can't support throwing a dollar amount at it. If we need to look at it, let's take a look at it. But let's come up with a plan as to what can go up there, what it can, what it's going to cost us. I agree with you. There's just going to say there's nothing greater than a cemetery, but that doesn't sound right. It has to be a place that welcomes you. It has to be a place that you can be at peace at. It can be a beautiful place at times, only for the memories that we can carry in there. So I would say, I can't support. I would say that we get it back to Public Works, the cemetery people, and let's come up with an idea and a plan. But I don't know what the dollar would be. I would support that.
Brandon, go ahead.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. So we did value the landscaping component of the work up there. So in 2024, we identified replacing or actually adding 2 additional columbariums. There's one there now. We wanted to add 2. We had deferred or a plan to complete the landscaping works in 2025. We identified a project budget of $100,000 in 2025. So through this motion, our understanding is that we're going to be moving that $100,000 in 2025 into the 2024 budget, and we would do both the columbarium and the landscaping all at once. So it would be around $200,000 for that entire works.
Can't get a plan that quick.
Councillor DeFlavio.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. So to Mr. Wortman, so the $100,000 in 2025, was that levied or is that from reserves?
Just conferring with, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, just conferring with our finance director, acting finance director. Yes, it's through reserves. Okay.
And through you, Mayor, so then I have no problem with it if we put money aside for it and we move it up a year. I guess if there are specific things that Councillor Vardy has concerns about, I'd love to, I'd like to hear the specifics of what you'd like to see done so we can make sure that some of those things actually come to fruition in this budget process, not just, landscaping is a pretty general thing. So if there are specific concerns that you have that you think we need to address, I'd like to hear those so that way we make sure that they get taken care of.
Brandon?
Yeah, thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So we've actually worked with our friends over here in Community Services. Olivia actually helped us come up with a conceptual plan for some improvements that we can make there. So I think we actually included it as previous year's budget as a kind of a conceptual design, so I can certainly circulate that to council just for more information. So there has been some thought into making it a little bit nicer with landscaping, a pathway, just filling in kind of some vegetation around the columbarium area and the pond area.
Not to jump the queue, but just I think the question's important. With 49 projects on the go and 45 on the go and 49 new, do we have the capabilities to add another project?
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. I guess that's a hard one. Initially, that's why we had pushed it back to 2025. I was a bit concerned with the design of the downtown coming this year. That being said, there's obviously got support from council tonight and some resourcing help, which helps provide some more capacity in our capital projects team. So I've conferred with them, and we think we can tackle it this year.
Great, thank you. Councillor Vardy.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think a couple things. One, if you compare the two cemeteries, Queen's Lawn is a beautiful cemetery to be in. If you look at the Mountain Cemetery, it's too much of an open space, and we know that there's not shade for people going to visit their loved ones. We know within the region, it is, if not the one of the most expensive cemeteries. Like, we charge a premium for the Mountain Road Cemetery, and I've had this discussion with our local funeral parlor. And I think we did a study about our tree canopy, and we fall very short for a healthy community. And I'm sorry, I can't think of the numbers off by heart. I think it should be 30%, and we're somewhere around 7%. So, which was quite surprising when we did the GIS study in the Green Committee. So, it's an ideal place to start bettering our environment so that we've got a healthy canopy that gives back to the entire community, right? So, and I mean, I'll say this, like when I first saw the columbariums, I mistook them for something else. So, and I think it's really important that not be mistaken for other things, so that there definitely needs to be, something there to make it attractive, particularly considering how much people are paying to go into our cemetery. So, I go up there quite frequently, And I also go into Queen's Lawn because I have relatives in both. And there's such a difference that, so there's many benefits beyond beautification. There's the health benefit to do this. And it also builds on our Carolinian motion, my Carolinian motion, that was approved last term and has been widely supported by staff in the years following, so which I'm greatly appreciative of. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Councillor Bradzi.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Just to kind of build on Councillor Vardy's comments there, with the need to increase the tree canopy, I think the cemetery is an excellent opportunity to have, I don't know what the term for it is, but there's modern burials where you actually end up becoming woven into part of the tree. And although I hope it's many, many years away, I'm interested in becoming a tree myself. Maybe, is that something we could consider out of this 200 grand? Is there anyone that could answer that? Because I think that's kind of killing two birds with one stone, for lack of a better word.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, something I'd have to take away with my team. Obviously I'd want to understand before I say yes or no to that a little bit more.
Councillor Sharwa.
Through you, Mayor Jordan, thank you. We talked about, being careful of the budget and just to be reallocating money for something like this when staff has already taken a lot of time in order to prioritize what we need. I can't support it. And also, even just from the time, I want to make sure that the things that we've prioritized and the staff have prioritized are the things that we're working on. So I'm not going to support it.
Any further comments? Seeing none. Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that an additional $100,000 be allocated from the 2025 budget to the 2024 budget to add landscaping in cemeteries. E-scribe voting, please. All right, that is defeated. All right, up next we have moved by Councillor Vardy, so we need a seconder on this one. It's resolved that traffic calming measures project 02-320221 be increased by $100,000. Need a seconder? Councillor Bradzi, seconder. Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Bradzi. Resolved that the traffic calming measures project 02-320221 be increased by $100,000. And discussions? Councillor Sharwa.
Through Mayor Jordan, thank you. Same reason for me. I want to stay within budget, and I'd like to make sure that the things that we've prioritized for staff that they're working on, that those things get done before we add more to their plate.
Councillor Howe. Councillor Vardy.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think we've heard a lot of comments from residents about the need to make our streets safer. And while I know that we are doing a transportation master plan, there are some critical areas that we've heard complaints of for years. And, waiting a whole other year before we try to make our streets a bit safer seems like a long time to wait when it's a safety issue. And we're just asking that some money be moved up so that we can have some early deliverable, or at least the opportunity for some early deliverables with the Transportation Master Plan. I know a lot of people I've spoken to support reducing the speed on our local streets, not our main streets, but our kind of local residential streets. Would like to see 40K. I think that we also have some streets where we could pilot some speed bumps like we have in Ward 3 that definitely work to slow traffic down. So unless we put some money aside, then we're not going to do anything to improve safety until 2025. And, it was something that we'd hope to see in 2023, because that's when the master plan was supposed to be finished. It wasn't finished. So now we're looking at 2024. And I don't think putting safety considerations off is necessarily a good idea, because there are probably some early wins where we can, pilot a couple things, make our streets safer for pedestrians and cyclists and students and everyone else who uses our roads.
Brandon, would you like to
Sure,
speak
thank
on
you,
that?
through you, Mr. Mayor. So I think I've spoken to this matter before. We are doing a transportation master plan this year. Again, I know there's concerns about delays and the fact that we haven't got it out sooner, and I concur with those, and I apologize for that. But the question came up, in terms of speed bumps and the 40-kilometer-per-hour signs, and whether or not we could do that this year. I think, as I've spoken to before, my concern is are we putting the cart before the horse here when we don't know the outcomes of the transportation master plan? So maybe the motion can be reworded that it would be reflective of the outcomes of the transportation master plan. Does that make sense?
All right, so I have it rewritten here. Resolve the traffic calming measures project 02320221 be increased by $100,000 subject to the conclusion of the transportation master plan. Councillor DeVoley.
Mayor Jordan, a couple comments. Previously, and again still, I do think that we need to base our decisions on data and analysis, and not, I will say, and use a term that was used before, on those who speak loudest in our ears, or what our neighbors say. So, I truly support doing the transportation master plan before we make a decision on this. I realize it has taken a while, and it could be Q3, Q4 before we have results from it. So be it. I guess I have one question related to the resolution, though. If we are passing this resolution, what would be the funding for this particular item? Would it be coming from reserves, from the levy, if we add this in?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just conferring with our acting director is through the roads assets reserve.
I mean, I think my impression of what is going to take place in 2024 is that, the study will be done, and we will have considered it and considered the recommendations and so on. But in terms of having enough time to actually do the sorts of things that this resolution is contemplating, is probably not going to be happening in 2024. That realistically, by the time the study is done, it comes to us, we consider it, we say what we like, what we didn't, what we're going to move forward with. Realistically, any speed bumps, traffic calming additions could very well be 2025 anyway. Yes, no? What's the workload like here? If you could comment, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So again, with our team, we've committed to having the Transportation Master Plan completed by the end of 2024, which our reasoning, not our reasoning, but which would lead nicely into the 2025 budget. So anything, part of the Transportation Master Plan will look at things like setting policies by council. A huge component of that, of the TMP, is public input. So the public may be in favor of speed bumps and 40 kilometers and other mechanisms to reduce speed. We're not sure of that yet, but at the same time, it would be council's direction and council's decision, taking into consideration the public's input as well as staff's recommendations. So their question was, can it be completed in 2024? I think the answer is likely not. I think to me the better approach is to wait to see what the Transportation Master Plan outcomes are, and then putting an action plan going forward. Just to add to, it's not like we aren't doing anything in terms of road safety. We have I think it's $35,000 in our budget this year. $55,000 in our budget this year to continue on with our pilot road traffic calming in road bollard program. Also, we're purchasing additional radar boards. We are bringing our complement up to 2 per ward now. So we want to get those circulated, as well as our monitoring and software program. So we are doing our best, but obviously the TMP will inform how we move forward collectively with council's input and input from the public.
If I could just add then, so then the resolution, I think what I'm hearing is that if we pass this resolution to say that we will consider these measures after the Transportation Master Plan is done, in effect, that will happen in 2025. But the resolution is contemplating allocating dollars for 2024. But reality is that we're probably going to get to those measures in 2025. So perhaps the resolution needs to be clarified as to the year that we are contemplating this, or it's just a general statement that says we will consider these types of projects after the Transportation Master Plan is completed, and we leave dollars totally out of the amendment.
Councillor Bradzi.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. I got to say, I completely agree with Director Wortman and Councillor Davoli. I think we have to wait until the Transportation Master Plan is completed. But then I also further that think we should couple this with our asset management policy. I know we've seen quite a number of roads shave and paved with asphalt resurfacing. So especially if we're looking at something like concrete speed bumps that like we see on Lake Street, we might save significant dollars if we couple that at the same time as they shave and paves. But so we also kind of need to complete the asset management work. But I agree, kind of think we should leave dollars out of it for now, because these recommendations will be made at the end of 2024 in the Transportation Master Plan. So we're really not assigning any dollars till 2025. This makes sense to me, but.
Councillor DeFlavio.
Yeah, I might be beating a dead horse here. I think, through you, Mayor, I think Mr. Wortman's torn because on one side, he hears $100,000 more in his budget. Sounds like a great idea, but then he realizes that he's not going to be able to spend it this year anyway. So the Transportation Master Plan is supposed to be a comprehensive document that looks years into the future and looks at what we need, as far as the entire community transportation system. So putting $100,000 in this year doesn't make any sense from my perspective, because this transportation master plan is probably going to tell us what we're going to be doing for the next 10 years, not for the next year. It's not going to be this is what we need to do in 2025. If I know anything about the Public Works budgeting process, it's going to be what we need to do in 2025, and then every year after that for the next several years in order to make all of those findings come to reality. So while I love the idea of putting $100,000 more in there, we'll have to, I think we'll leave those in reserves and just do it next year when it's appropriate. I don't think that there's any reason to do it this year.
Councillor Vardy.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there may arrive instances where we could use some data, and that we might want to pilot a couple of things during the Transportation Master Plan, so that it will inform the Transportation Master Plan. And I would like there to be at least some money set aside that we could do some small pilots in order to see, test out their effectiveness for Grimsby. So rather than just wait till 2025, there could be some things that, become very apparent early on. There could be some early deliverables from the plan that we'd like to fund, and I would just like to see some money set aside to be able to do that. So if you don't want to put in 100,000, make it 50, but at least something is there to support safer streets in 2025.
Councillor Korstanji.
Thank you, through you, Chair. So we have the region's red light cameras and the speed cameras, and some of the funds from that, I'm not sure exactly how that works. Would that come back to us then, and then can in the future be used for safety measures put in place?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So my understanding, it's going back a year or so when we originally approved or provided, council provided their endorsement of the program. I believe the first few years is basically the region would any I want to say revenue received from tickets would go back to funding any expenses that they've incurred. So there may be higher upfront capital costs down the road when those capital costs have then been paid for. My understanding is some of that money would come back, a portion to the municipalities. Sorry, just to add, I'm not sure when, obviously, the timing of that, but that sure is certainly a revenue source potentially in the future that we could look at. And sorry, just on that note to add, and just, I guess, going back to Councillor DeFlavio's point as well, a component of the project will be an implementation action plan, like as you mentioned, looking at, a financial commitment for implementing the various different things that come out of the Transportation Master Plan. So obviously that will be a large consideration for council as we move forward is, do we have the funding? Can we get additional funding? And those kind of questions.
Councillor DeVoley.
Mayor Dern, it's an interesting question as to how much money conceivably might flow to us for our share of these fines under the Provincial Offences Act. And as I recall our treasurer sharing with me at a meeting before she left, the number that was estimated, or the estimate that was provided by the region, was so small for 2024, it was not even worth putting in our budget. So that's my first comment on that. Not too much coming right now. The second thing I think that we will really benefit from by completing the Transportation Master Plan this year, and from hearing what the results are from the region's red light, speed camera programs and so on, is we will likewise learn from their projects what impact it really does have on traffic speeds, traffic patterns, and so on. And so for those two reasons coupled together, plus the third, that the amount of revenue coming to us is going to be really, really small, at least for 2024. Who knows where it'll be after that? I really would like to see us wait until all of this is done before we commit additional dollars, before we have some definitive recommendations coming to us.
Seeing no further questions, I'll read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Barty, second by Councillor Bradsey. Resolved that Traffic Calming Measures Project 02-320221 be increased by $100,000, subject to the conclusion of the Transportation Master Plan. Vote through your e-scribe, please. And that is defeated. Next resolution we have, moved by Councillor Davoli. We're still looking for a seconder. Resolved that Project 02-120009, Town Hall Cogen Building demolition be removed from the 2024 capital project plan, and that the related budget costs and the related reserve funding of $200,000 be removed from the 2024 capital project plan. So a seconder on that? All right. Councillor Korstanji. Any discussion? Councillor Sharwa.
Through Mayor Jordan, thank you. I just want clarification. So my understanding was the need for this had to do with the PKC parking lot, right? So how is this, if we say no to this, how is this going to affect that project?
As Director Sweeney said earlier, the different configuration of the project has allowed us not to deal with that and not to have this expense, and the project will still have its number of parking spots that is needed.
Thank you.
Any further questions? I'll read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Davoli, second by Councillor Korstanji. Resolved that Project 02-120009, Town Hall Cogen Building demolition be removed from the 2024 capital project plan, and that the related budgeted costs and related reserve funding of $200,000 be removed from the 2024 capital project plan. E-scribe voting, please. All right, that was carried. Okay. Now we're to the 2024 capital budget outlined in Appendix C as amended. Need a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Howe. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Howe. Resolved that the 2024 capital budget outlined in Appendix C be approved as amended. Please use your e-scribe. All right, and that's approved unanimously. Now, can I get a mover and seconder to discuss the approval of the 2024 wastewater gross operating budget? Councillor Corsangi, Councillor Davoli. Any discussion? Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. So I think it's important that we explain the water billing system changes and the water levy, the special levy. Can you go over once again, and I apologize for the redundancy, but can you go over once again, is the long-term plan, is the long-term goal to completely eliminate that levy, the additional levy, or is it to keep it where it is? How many municipalities in Ontario, I know we've talked about this before, but if you can, restate how many municipalities in Ontario do their water billing this way? And then I've got a couple of other questions related to water billing as well, if you don't mind just getting started with that, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. With regards to the wastewater, just to go back to where we were, the council approved a 50-50 split, 50% on the tax levy and 50% being funded through consumption usage, basically, on the water bill. So in 2023, when we phased it in, it didn't get the full 50-50 because it was phased in as of May 1st. So in 2023, there was like 67% on the billing, on the tax levy, and 33% through consumption. What we're doing this year is we're moving fully to the 50-50 split, of 50% on the tax bill and 50% through consumption based on the water bill. So that's where we are now, and that's what we have approved to date. So what the intent from council will be, have to be decided from council. Going forward, with regards to number of municipalities, there are 444 municipalities in Ontario, and we are the only one that has wastewater or water on our tax bill. I think those were your two questions.
Yeah, and I just want to further to that, because I do remember when the consultant said that we were the only municipality, and the fact that we're the last out of 441 in Ontario. What happened in the last 15 years? Like, I don't know. Councillor DeFlavio, you can continue.
Thank you. So is staff planning to bring forward a plan to eliminate that completely from the tax bill? And when can we anticipate that coming forward? And further to that, because of the increased costs on the water bills, on individual water bills, have we looked at more frequent billing? Because currently the bills go out every 4 months, and which was fine under the old system because it was being heavily subsidized on the taxes, so the bills were not that high. But the water bills now are more accurately representing what the cost of water, it's still 50-50. So to be clear, there's going to be a significant increase to come if we move that over to the billing. But can we make those bills more frequent so that people aren't hit with a huge bill every 4 months instead of one every 2 months or every month? Do we have that capacity?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. There's a few situations that we need to get through to get to that point with regards to the timing of the bills. Let me go back to your first comment. We do need to bring forward to council a recommendation on moving 100% to consumption-based, and that will be a council decision to go to that direction. Before we even get to that point, though, we need to make some changes to our wastewater system. Right now, our software would need to be updated to make more frequent billing. That would definitely be a staff impact, because right now we have 2 clerks managing the 3 buildings, so now we have more frequent billing, more frequent mails, more frequent inquiries, so all the workload increases. On top of that, right now we have 2,200 water meters that need manual reads, so we would have to convert those to the RF, I believe they're referred to, radio frequency readings, so we can move to that. And then we need to decide if we're going to do drive-by or tower. So there's a lot of conditions that we need to go through and decisions we need to make before we get to that more frequent billing. But I think it's a great opportunity that we move forward with this. One, to alleviate that pressure on residents, as well as improving our efficiency. So if we have staff retiring or anything like that, we have a plan in place to move forward without, additional costs and improving services.
Just the last question. So do we need to budget something this year in order to hear back the costs or the potential of that 100% off the levy approach? What do we need to do from a council perspective to get the final exploration of that going forward? So that we can see what's necessary to get from the 50-50 to the 100% on the billing system, the way that other municipalities are doing it.
Oh, sorry, through you, Mayor. Staff did meet already to discuss this next steps, and we're moving forward with trying to determine what is the cost, what is the resource availability from the consulting side or the firm, and do we need to do, is this an RFP? Isn't it an RFP? We're investigating all of that right now in 2024, so we can bring a fulsome report back to council on next steps.
Councillor DeVoley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, and I know at our Finance Committee, we have started discussions on this, certainly had some fulsome discussions on, the impact of the change in billings and so on. And I know that we will be working on a report in the next couple of months on all of that too. Thank you, Councillor DeFlavio. Finance will be happy to take that on for you and to report back for sure. I wanted to share one more thing because you know what? We hear a lot of comments on social media and all the rest about, the impact, it's been horrendous and so on, and perhaps it has for some of our residents, but I took it on myself to do an analysis of my own home. And what I would like to share with my fellow councillors and our staff is that when we dropped a component of the wastewater out of the levy, my property taxes went down by $172. And amazingly enough, the assessment of my house is the exact average that we use in all our calculations. What happened on the wastewater side? It went up by $186 for a net change of $14 in my life. Now, what was the big impact? What I found is an even bigger impact is the amount of consumption. And Director Wortman and his staff can probably confirm for us, but 2023 was an amazingly wet year as well. And I have a 4-year history of my consumption, and quite honestly, 2023 was the lowest consumption, and really no change in my household. I don't have any teenagers taking frequent baths and showers. I didn't in the last number of years. I still didn't this year. But truly, the weather has a huge impact on what takes place in terms of consumption of water. And of course, our wastewater is now linked to the consumption of the water. And so, that drives the calculation as well. But I hear on social media people commenting about, the bills are up so high and so on. All I can say is if you're finding it difficult to understand it, please come in, talk to our staff. Happy to share, which I did share with our Treasury staff, my Excel worksheets and my calculations. Not that complicated. Line up all your property tax bills, line up all your water bills. But I can say for my own home, as an example, the impact was a net of $14. Thank you.
And seeing no further questions, I do have just a further comment. With our water bills being on the tax roll, we have probably almost 600 homes above the escarpment that aren't on municipal water, and they've been in some ways subsidizing the people that are on municipal water. And I think I'd probably get 100% buy-in that people up on top of the escarpment wouldn't think that's fair. So.
Mayor, just a correction, sorry. The people on the escarpment don't pay the water levy. So They haven't been subsidizing. Just to be clear, when you live outside of water billing, you don't pay the water levy.
All right. So thanks for that clarification. All right, I'll retract that. Councillor Bratz.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to make a comment that, I like everyone around the Horseshoes kind of received the complaints that, charging wastewater based off the consumption of water is kind of unfair. In principle, I can kind of agree where most of these residents are coming from, but I just wanted to point out the Ontario case of Nylene Canada, Inc. versus the corporation of the town of Arn Prior, who actually went out and could prove that they were the amount of wastewater they were sending out was less than the amount of water they were taking in. And the courts actually sided with the municipality, and it said it's completely reasonable for them to charge based off the water consumption, even if a resident can prove a drastic difference. So I have found that interesting, and you don't really see courts siding with municipalities too often, so it's kind of nice.
All right, seeing no further questions or comments, moved by Councillor Korsanji, second by Councillor Devoli, resolved that the 2024 wastewater gross operating budget outlined in Appendix A in the amount of $7,527,750 and a levy of $3,631,430, and the wastewater rates outlined in Appendix B be approved. Yes. E-scribe voting, please. And that is carried. Up next, can I get a mover and seconder to discuss the approval of the 2024 water gross operating budget? Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor DeFlavio. Questions or comments? Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. I should have asked this on the last one, Angela, and I apologize. Because we only got a partial amount from last year, I know it's going to be hard to answer this question, but do we know if our new budgeting method that we imposed last year is fair? Does that make sense, that question? Because we were while it was based on, best, what we thought was going to happen, is the revenue that's coming in from the new billing system meeting what we expected? And is it offsetting in what we lost from as far as revenue is concerned on the levy? Does that question make sense? If it doesn't, I'll try to throw it at you another way.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I think I understand where you're going, and this is regarding the wastewater, not the water. So we didn't make any changes to the wastewater the way we were approaching it. We are in this year, the Q4, I believe, is still looking positive. We are going to come out with a slight surplus. With regards to the wastewater, that's a little bit different. There is a regional impact on this, but on the Q4 for 2023. Sorry, there is an adjustment that the region has, we have a rolling average because the wastewater is such a fixed component of their budget that they do a rolling average of consumption and then charge it back to us based on that. So there was a $692,000 adjustment made in 2023 for the averaging of the prior 3 years. So if we pull that out, we would be in a surplus position for 2023, I believe, or very close to budget. So we're anticipating if there's no changes, there isn't this year an adjustment based on the budgets that they're proposing, we should be okay with the current rate structure.
Councillor Howe.
Through you, Mayor, a comment. Each year or anytime I've ever come across this, I take a look at this and think how lucky we are that we can go to our tap and turn it on and we can drink from that tap. And so much of the world, we take it for granted. And so much for the world, do not, that they don't have that. So we're lucky. We're very, very lucky. Thank you.
All right, seeing no further questions or comments, moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor DeFlavio, resolved that the 2024 water gross operating budget outlined in Appendix A in the amount of $7,996,600 and the water rates outlined in Appendix B be approved. Please use your e-scribe.
Yes.
It should be unanimous. There's no reason to go here against it. All right, and that's carried. Up next, can I get a mover and seconder to discuss the approval of the DIA gross operating budget? Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Bradzi. Any discussion? Councillor DeVoley.
Yes, I guess to share with my fellow councillors that, of course, Mayor Jordan and I sit on the board of the DIA, and I can assure you that the board has given a lot of consideration to this. They have met with our finance staff a number of times, too, and so, I leave you with that assurance that they have looked into this budget very carefully. As well, I think it's important to understand that although there is an impact on the levy, it's important to clarify that this levy is not on all the residents, commercial, industrial, et cetera, ratepayers. This is a levy that is on the businesses and the property owners, and therefore the businesses in that downtown improvement area, catchment area, let's say, which is defined with street names and a map. And so although we talk about it as if it's on the levy, again, it's a very specific levy on very specific property owners in this case.
Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Bradzi, resolved that the 2024 Downtown Improvement Area gross operating budget outlined in Appendix A in the amount of $135,680 and a levy of $87,350 be approved. E-scribe, please. Yes. And that's carried. Can I get a mover and seconder to discuss the approval of the 2024 operating levy? Councillor DeVoley, Councillor Howe. Speakers? Councillor Howe.
Through you, Mayor, something I'd like to, now I got to find my marker. In respect to the council budget, last year we spent $34,000, and forgive me if I haven't hit the right number yet, on training and development, which is basically the conferences. We had a budget level of 21.7. The conferences are getting more expensive. I think we as a council can work at bringing that number down substantially to set, if we're going to set a tone, then I think this is a tone. I think what it is the numbers that go to the conferences. We existed for quite a while on the that kind of a budgeted number, over 20 grand. But it jumped if we're going to continue. And as you can see, it's migrated into being the budget lines for all the way through now. We've set a new standard. I don't think it should be that high. I think we can correct it. I think we can be a little bit more judicious as to how we attend conferences, how many of us attend the conferences, and what we bring back out of the conferences. I would like to suggest that we change that 2023 budget and 21.7 it'd be to 24,000 instead of 21.7, and adhere to that.
24.
What, right here, 22, oh, 24, okay. Yeah, no, didn't change that 34,500 down to 24,000. Sorry.
Can I just get a clarification on what the 2024 budget was and what we spent? Just so I'm on the same page.
Okay, our actual for 2023 was 35,253, and our budget was 21,700. So that's a 50% increase.
Do you want, Councillor Howard, do you want an amendment to change the number?
Yes, please.
All right.
Yes, please.
All right, Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. So I agree with Councillor Howe. My concern is that it's not just council that has seen an increase in the cost of training. It's staff as well. If you look at some of the staff budget lines, some of them have doubled. So if we want to tackle this, I think it needs to be looked at comprehensively and say, you know, maybe we have to put a policy in place as far as attendance at conferences. In the past, the staff would come before their committee and say, this is a conference that I think is important, I'd like to attend it, and it would be approved by the committee. I'm not saying that that's the way we need to go, but something like that where, you know, there is a process in place for approval for these types of things, or a limit of one conference per year per councillor, or something like that restricts the amount that's being spent, anything like that, but some sort of process in place that limits that, Mayor. I think that part of the previous concern was when you have a lot of new council members, it's an excellent learning opportunity for people to go to some of these conferences. So I don't want to restrict people's learning, but I do want to, you know, be prudent with the budget. So we got to find a middle ground, and maybe a process is how we do that. I don't know.
Our CAO would like to comment.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I think for staff, it's a little different because we do have turnovers of staff and new staff onboarding, right? In which case we need to provide the training. So it's possible that we have two different staff in a given position, right? And we would be training two different staffs in that given year. So I think we do have a policy in place for training and conferences for staff. So we do try to follow that as much as possible. I know that council does not have a policy, so I think some of these conversations in regards to council should be addressed through a policy.
Councillor Sharwa.
Through Mayor Jordan, thank you. I don't know if we're at the stage where we can make recommendations, but I think having gone to Roma my first term, like many of us had, it was our first conference, and then AMO. I thought AMO was very applicable to us and probably got a little bit more out of it. But But the delegations are super important. So I'm wondering if for, when we're developing these policies, we can maybe get together as a council and decide what we're aiming for delegations, and whatever the approvals are, then maybe the appropriate parties go on that behalf for Roma. But I think AMO should be something anybody could go to, because there's so much that we can get out of that one.
Councillor Brett.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. I actually want to echo the same comments as Councillor Charwell. I think, me personally, I've seen a tremendous value to going to these conferences as a new councillor myself, but I also want to be fiscally responsible. And that being said, if we have specific delegations that we're going to and targeted asks, maybe we include the chairs of said committees. Maybe we don't need to bring all of us. Maybe there's a kind of a delegation of what we're asking for, and kind of delegate which councillors go. But I do agree. AMO is the big one. I think it's beneficial that we all go. But so our budget was, I see a budget of 25,000. And Councillor Hall, you keep mentioning 35. So were we 10,000 over this year? That's the case? Maybe instead of overcomplicating it with the process, so that we can, if everybody wants to go for the purposes of learning, that they can, maybe if the mayor just kind of select, keep a tight, lean list of who goes and who doesn't go, and then, because Roma makes sense too. We can drive there for the day off for a delegation, but AMO, it's a trip. So if we're going to kind of look at ways to save funds, maybe we look at Roma versus AMO. It's just my thoughts.
Councillor Frake.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Yeah, I do believe that, that these conferences are important. We know we have to take time out of our busy home lives, to do these things. So we are part-time councillors. It's one of the few opportunities we get to get into faces of ministers or their staff, do some networking, make some connections with other municipalities and so on and so forth. I think it's a valuable experience. I think it's a valuable learning. It's part learning, but it's also networking. So it's more than, just a learning session. I believe they have a lot of value. I believe we get more out of it than we pay for it. And yeah, I do have a tendency to go along with some of the things that Councillor Howe said. Maybe we should be more selective, and what Councillor Shaw said. Maybe we should be more selective as to who goes. If there's a delegation that is specific to a particular function or a particular project or those types of things, then maybe we should be a little more honed in our how we select people to go. I have no problem with that. I'm talking for council now, not staff. So I think staff needs to do this more often probably than councillors. They hopefully will be here longer than we are. So I do believe these have a lot of value. I think AMO and Roma are the two we need to concentrate on. We did go to one last year, the year before. It was the federal one, and I think that was kind of a little bit out of our reach in terms of what we learned. It was too specific and too federal, if I might say it that way. So I do believe we should concentrate on Roma and AMO. Those are the two that really apply to what we do, and in both councillors and staff. So I would not want to see that cut out because I think councillors do have to take time out of their lives to do this, and it's a valuable event to go to. Thank you.
CIO, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. The 34,000, that number is based on two conferences per each member of council.
Councillor Vardy.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think fundamentally training is very important, and it's important for councillors to stay current. I think some of the informal things that happen at these meetings in terms of the networking hearing what other municipalities are doing and what their experience is also very important. And I also think that, as Councillor Sherwa stated, the delegations are extremely important. Just to get your face in front of ministers and to keep reminding them, we're here and we want money. and that's a big, that's a big reason why you're meeting with ministers, is because you want something to get done for your town. It's not just a social gathering. So I'm fine with the budget. It's based on 2 a year. I think the 2 to go to are Roma and Ammo. I found them very, very valuable. And that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Councillor Howe.
Through you, Mayor. I didn't just kind of pull this out of my backside, but, I've given some thought. I would see, for instance, last year, 6 of us went to AMO, and I believe it was 4 of us that went to Roma. I believe that was the numbers. That's quite a number. What I would envision is that each year that there'd be the 2 main ones, obviously, but 2 would go to, and let's figure that we got 4 conferences between now and the end of our term, if you wish. So 5, well, we'll count 4. It's easier for me. So there's 4 divided into 8 is 2. So 2 people, 2 counselors to each of those, and then we can work it out. I can assure you that I will not be one of the ones going. I'll leave it up to the people that are much wiser than I am. But I would also enforce the fact that the mayor or alternate, and I'm going to really qualify that, mayor or alternate is not included, is part of, so it'd be 2 plus the mayor. So we would have coverage, we would have people there. We've certainly got, the CAO is always going to be there, so that we've got follow-up. And in respect to sharing, quite frankly, I don't believe any of us have come back from one of those conferences with some type of a report of, who did we talk to? What did we see? What did we learn? And, what opportunities are there for us? So I feel strongly on that. I agree. Education is paramount. No question about it. But anyways.
Councillor Davoli.
Mayor Jordan, just to echo some of those thoughts, that yes, I think, mathematically we can probably work it out that, 2 councillors and the mayor plus staff to some of these conferences. I will share, though, that, I did go to the AMO conference last year. I've been to a lot of conferences in my life. Accountants, CPAs in public practice. We have lots, accounting ones, audit ones, tax ones, you name it. I can't say I found it all that useful, to be quite honest with you. There were things, yes, and there were many things that, I did not learn from at that point in time. I will say that there are even other conferences out there. So, I'd like the opportunity perhaps to pass on some of those, but go to a CPA Canada conference on the public sector accounting rules or what's going on in our field. Just like there's the Good Roads conferences, right? So for those who are more interested in public works, maybe, they're interested in things like that too. So, perhaps we could just, at this point, perhaps we could have, eventually a resolution to reduce the budget, but perhaps we could then leave it with our staff and see if they could come up with what I'll call a fairness policy as to how we could actually divvy this up between us and all still learn from each other.
Councillor Bradzi.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. So kind of talking to some other councillors at Roma and AMO, a lot of them actually have, so our council is one group lump sum. They kind of break it out to each councillor has a budget, a yearly budget that they can spend on on conferences. So without kind of overcomplicating the situation, I just think maybe we kind of mimic what some of the other municipalities are doing if this is the route we want to go down, and each councillor has a specified budget. And then should you go over your budget, you'd have to be coming to, if you say Don, Councillor Howe, sorry, if you didn't go to any conferences, your budget would be full, obviously, which you could at point lend to another councillor. Just kind of some conversations I've had off touch with other councillors. So.
Are there any other motions related to the operating budget? Councillor Davoli.
Yes, Mayor Jordan, I guess I will start with a few questions to Ms. Safani about our hospital levy. And I see from your presentation, not in the fulsome budget, because I'm not sure what line it's on, but in the presentation, page 20 is what I'm referring to. We have this chart that shows year by year. You know, we started in 2020 with levying $200,000 on the ratepayers. The next year, we increased that to $321,000. And the proposal this year is to increase it again to $582,000. And I guess the yin and the yang of what we are doing is we were trying to get the amount that we were levying to be a number somewhat in the ballpark of what we were going to be paying on principal and interest when we go out and issue the debenture. And so I see part of the rationale for increasing the amount again, because we know we've gone through a time period of interest rates going up, but we're also hoping that, you know, and I don't know if the crystal ball is that accurate, but, you know, there is some hope that in the latter half of 2024, which is when we will be issuing the debenture, and by that we mean by which we will be requesting the region to go out and borrow the money on our behalf. So we're proposing that it will be 582, but we also know that this interest is based upon, I will say, our best guess, and I hate to use the word guess, but our best guess of how much we think we might need. Let me continue on. So at this point, once we do that, we'll have set aside for this payment to the hospital almost $1.9 million. Our commitment is $9.3 million. And what it means that going forward after that is what we're going to be levying is going to be on the residents who live here and theoretically will then be making use of our new hospital. And so I guess my question is, you know, how tight, how concrete, how positive do you feel about the assumptions? Is there any wiggle room for us to perhaps reduce the amount rather than increasing the contribution even more? You know, instead of going to 582, could we put that in half even, go to, I'm going to say 538? On the theory then that once that number is finally finalized, when we issue the debenture in 2025, that levy will be based upon the principal and interest, and perhaps it will provide a better matching, that will be levying it on the residents who live here going forward, who are thus making use of our hospital going forward. Would you mind commenting on some of this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, did you say actually going to a 20-year or maintaining the 30-year? Sorry, did you even address that?
No, I didn't, but I will say that I like the 20-year. I still do, absolutely. I think $2.6 million in savings is awesome. And, you know, I always think that less debt is better than more debt, so the faster you can get it paid off, the better. I mean, we know we're going to have debt issued of, I'll say, in the neighborhood of, you know, $8 million for the hospital in 2024. If everything stays on track, $11 million for the Peach King the year after. And the hope is that, you know, we don't have too many more of these large ones coming at us. And a good part of this is that in 2027, Fire Station Number 2 will be paid off, and that debt, I think, is around 2 million or something less than that right now. So, yeah, 1.6. Yes, it goes down by about 400,000 every year. So, the good news is that that will be coming off too. So, I guess I'm just looking at this thinking, is there, how firm do you feel about the assumptions on the rate increases? And do you think there's some wiggle room here to reduce the levy a bit and perhaps do a better matching of our expenses to those who will be living in the community and paying for this through their property taxes going forward rather than taking it historically back, right?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think that's a great recommendation. What we could do is I would recommend reducing it by half, the 88 to maybe 44. When I did the calculation back in December, IO, Infrastructure Ontario, which most likely where we would go for the debt, was estimating 4.97 for a 20-year term. When I did it on the 29th, when this budget was published, it went down to 4.75. So is there some uncertainty in the interest rate right now? Absolutely. Could we possibly see that come down so our needs for this year might not be as high? That's a good chance. So as we go through, and if there is a potential interest rate drop, as you know, there's some uncertainty with what the bank's going to do. We might see that in June, July, when we actually go for the debenture, which would mean 2025 would have require a less increase in the levy to fund the full debt amount.
Yeah, so could I propose that amendment to the budget then, that we reduce the hospital portion of the levy by reduce the increase of 44,000. So in effect, the levy would become 582 minus 44, whatever that is. Accountants and calculators go together really well, but I can't do a lot of these off the top of my head anymore. It would land us probably somewhere 550, I don't know. 582 minus 44 would be 538, right?
All right, that has been noted. Councillor Howe?
Second.
All right. Councillor DeFlavio.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Can either Councillor DeVoley or our treasurer explain? I'm sorry. I'm sorry for not understanding this. I hope I'm not alone. I always tell my students, if you ask a question, there's probably 10 other people in the room that have the same question. So I'm hoping I'm not alone in this, but I don't understand the impact of this and the changes that we're proposing to make. So if you can clarify that for us, I would really appreciate it.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to try and make this easier. So we know we're going to be needing to debt finance $9.3 million. So what we've been doing year after year is putting aside dollars into a reserve fund, basically levying dollars to build up that amount we're going to need for that debt payment when we actually start making those debt payments. So right now we're forecasting, when I did the calculation in December, the debt payment for 9.3 million less what we have in our reserve fund to date, which was about 7 million. We would need about some odd $7 million to fund the hospital. So that over 20 years would require us to pay $582,000 per year in debt. So what we've been doing in our budget is building that up in our base budget. So once that debt finally comes on, it's already there, it's already in our base budget, so there is no additional levy impact. So incrementally, we've been making that change. For this year, because we looked at doing a 20-year debt forecast instead of a 30-year debt forecast, it required an additional $88,000 to get us to that 582. So from that point, Councillor DeVoley has flagged that there's interest rates are uncertain right now. There might be a potential that they might come down, so when we actually debt finance this, there might be less need and not require the full $88,000. So why don't we be a little bit more conservative this year, fund only $44,000 this year, and then pick up whatever we need in 2025 once we know what the actual interest rate is going to be and what that debt payment is going to be.
That was a fantastic answer. Thank you for explaining that. Sorry, that was through you, Mayor.
And then we'll take a 5-minute.
Yeah. Are there any other questions on operating or anything?
Can we take 5 minutes?
All right, so Councillor DeVoley.
Sorry, Mayor, I cannot resist getting out of the trees and back up on top of the forest in the helicopter to talk about where we really landed, I guess, after all of this. And to start with, I want to talk about, the amount of the reserves and the capital we have in front of us and the reserves that are used for more than capital. But that I find when I look at our neighboring friends, our municipalities, our neighboring municipalities around us, I have to say, I think we are in really good, solid financial shape. And so let me share a couple things which I've picked up on the news and by looking at some of the budgets. So we're talking here about an increase for the town portion only of less than 5%. On an assessment of $442,000, which amazingly, by the way, happens to be mine, and that's not why she picks it, to do the calculations on. For some reason, I've turned out to be the average. We're talking about a property tax increase of $70 on our homeowners. Our friends next door to us, their increase is 7% on an average assessment of $388,000, so less than ours, $150 increase. Our friends in Fort Erie, 5.5% increase. Their average assessment is $200,300. Then they will be asking their residents for another $168 per household in those cases. And then an outlier that I really don't understand, but our friends at the City of St. Catharines have a 1.78% increase and $30.32, and I couldn't find their average assessment for that. How they're able to do it on $30.32 increase only has me baffled. I can only say that they must be drawing down on their reserves, but nevertheless, and
Yeah,
maybe
I can
the mayor can
clarify
add to that. Thank you.
Because I believe that's the City of St. Catharines has somewhat of a windfall for amalgamating transit. And so they were able to use that to lower their levy this year. And I think Welland and Thorold have that same benefit, and it's a one-time benefit for 2024.
That explains a lot. Thank you. So I guess what I want to share is that when I look at our budget, when I get out of the weeds, out of the trees, and when I'm up in the helicopter over this forest looking at what we are proposing to do, I see an analysis from staff where they've really gone at this again and again and again. I can tell because this process has taken months and months, and I know they've had many meetings and discussions about this. But what I see out of this truly is a municipality that I think is in good financial shape. When clients used to ask this of me in my previous life, I used to say, well, yeah, you got lots of reserves, but it depends what's in that train that's coming at you down the tracks. And when I look at our forecasts from our operating budget 10 year out, when I look at our capital forecast 10 years out, I don't see a big scary train coming at us. I see lots of challenges. I see an asset management study that may turn us on our head yet, but I really want to say that I think we are in a good, solid place, and I am happy to vote yes for this budget.
All right, with there being no other questions on the operating, we'll take a 5-minute break, and then Councillor DeFlavio.
Sorry, Your Worship, I did have one more question. The admin, on page 26, the admin training and development budget has more than doubled from 11,490 to 23,490. Now, when I look at other areas, there's been a decrease. Is that because it's been moved from one to the other, like where it wasn't appropriate in a specific department, and so it was moved to admin? It's a huge jump in 1 year, and I'm just wondering why that change occurred.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So we did add a communications department under admin. We also have new positions under admin that required more training this year. Does that help?
All right, seeing no further questions, we'll take a 5-minute break, so we'll be back at 8:40. See you then. Thank you. good? Can I have to say it again?
No, you're good.
Okay. All right, our first amendment, moved by Councillor Howe, resolved that the council conference budget be reduced to $28,000 and that staff be directed to create a council conference policy. So we need a seconder on that one. Councillor DeFlavio. So any discussion? Okay, Councillor. Councillor Bradzi.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. So just so I'm on the same page, we're reducing the budget by 6,000?
Yes, I think it's 6,000.
Okay.
Might be closer to 7, but. All right, seeing no further questions, I'll read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor DeFlavio. Resolved that council conference budget be reduced to $28,000 and that staff be directed to create a council conference policy. Use your e-scribe, please. Would you like to hear it again? You want to hear this?
Read it one more time.
All right. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor DeFlavio. Resolved that the council conference budget be reduced to $28,000 and that staff be directed to create a council conference policy. E-scribe, please. Yes, yes. All right, that was defeated. Moved by Councillor DeVoley, second by Councillor Howe. Resolved that staff be directed to reduce the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital reserve transfer to fund future debt needs to $44,000 in the 2024 budget, and that the $44,000 reserve transfer to fund future debt be included in the 2025 budgeted forecast. Any comments? Seeing none, use your e-scribe, please. All right, that's carried unanimously. And now we need a mover and seconder for the 2024 operating levy. Moved by Councillor Frake. Second by Councillor DeVoley.
Do you want to go to Angela for the final percentage? It's 4.9.
Angela, do you happen to have the final percentage after we've adjusted some things?
Yes, thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. The revised net levy impact is going to be 4.94, so that's after the growth.
Okay, thank you very much. That's good to hear. So I'll read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor DeVoley. Resolved that the 2024 operating levy outlined in Appendix A be approved as amended. E-scribe, please. All right, great. That's approved unanimously. Thank you to all the staff. I think you put us together with a great document, and with a little tweaking by council, we were able to come in kind of where we want. And I was on the CKTV radio program earlier today, and maybe a little bit like Punxsutawney Phil, I prognosticated that we'd come in somewhere around this way to former Mayor Walter Sendzik, and it worked out. So thank you, everyone.
We do have to pass the.
And we still have to pass the water and wastewater bylaws. So we're not quite done yet, but Councillor DeFlavio.
Thanks, Mayor. So number 9, once we pass that one, that completes this process. I do have some questions that I wanted to ask earlier in the process. And after we've approved the whole thing, how would I go about doing that? So,
I think we can take your questions now.
okay. So thanks, Your Worship. Then through you, so there was a budget survey that was done from October 19th or October 12th to November 19th. Nowhere in the presentation, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot, and if you need time to come back to the next council meeting nowhere in the presentation were the results of that survey mentioned. So I guess my questions are, how was that survey used to inform the budget process? Can you provide an overview of how the public input was utilized in the budgeting process? What specific priorities were raised by the public in the survey that were considered during the budget creation? How were budget allocations adjusted based on the feedback received in the pre-budget survey? Just all along those lines, because I think, please don't misunderstand me, because I think this is a great budget, and I think that staff's done an exceptional job. I just want to make sure that if we're soliciting feedback from the public, that we're actually using that feedback, and I don't see any evidence of that in the presentation today. So if you can answer some of those questions, then I have a follow-up, please.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. That's a great question, actually. As you pointed out, the survey was posted, and I believe we received just under 100 responses, but I would have to confirm that. It's been a while since I've looked at it. What we were looking at was where the priorities were with the roads rehab and things like that were the priorities, but I don't remember them off the top of my head, so I'll have to go back and look at those. But what we can do is bring a summary back for council information, so you have that information available.
Okay, so further to that, through you, Mayor, so what have we done to raise public awareness about budget decisions this year? Again, I'm not trying to be, I'm prepared to vote in favor of this budget. I just have concerns that the budget was released to the public in this agenda on Thursday, so the first time people had a chance to see it. So if people wanted to speak to the budget tonight, they would have had to read it Thursday night and ask to be a delegation for Friday. So I don't think that is an adequate amount of time for people to look at things and filter them. So again, I think this is a great budget, but what I'm going to recommend to council, and I hope people will agree, is that we do not deal with this at the February 20th meeting, that we give people a little bit of extra time so that if they do want to come, have a second kick at the can, that we do it at the first March meeting of council, so that gives people a little bit of time to read the report in the newspaper because the newspaper hasn't had a chance to read the budget until Thursday either, so it wouldn't be in the paper this week, just to give people the opportunity to filter through it and see if they have concerns. I don't have any concerns. I've brought up all my concerns tonight, but I'm still of the opinion that maybe there are people out there that have, that are smarter than us, that see something that we might have missed, and I want to give everybody an opportunity to do it. So I hope council will agree that, and maybe they won't. Again, I'll vote in favor of it. I'm fine with this budget, but I really think that we need to give people more of an opportunity for feedback, and we haven't provided that in that short window of time that we've given since the budget was released. I hope that makes sense.
All right, so are you putting forward a deferral motion?
Yes, motion to defer to the March 7th, 4th meeting?
Is there a seconder for Councillor DeFlavio's motion? Councillor Charwa is the seconder. All right, moved by Councillor Charwa, moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Charwa. Resolved that the budget be deferred, Budget and bylaws be deferred to March 4th, 2024's council meeting. Vote on your e-scribe, please. It's a deferral motion, so there's no discussion. All right, that's defeated. All right, now we need a mover and seconder to have staff prepare the bylaws for council approval. Councillor Howe. Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that staff be directed to prepare the necessary 2024 budget, water rate, and wastewater rate bylaws for approval at the February 20th, 2024 council meeting. E-scribe vote, please. All right, so that's carried. Congratulations, everyone. This time for real. Now we are done. Next council meeting is scheduled for February 20th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. Good night, everyone. Meeting is adjourned.